Hello everybody. To be honest, every time we make a video like this, we think this time we won't be able to find anything really unusual. After all, there must be a limit to the number of astonishing things in the universe, but the world never ceases to amaze us, and we in turn want to share our findings with you. So make yourself comfortable and let's get it on. Egg without a shell. Have you ever seen an egg without a shell? You might say. Who hasn't seen one? Just boil the egg and then peel it, that's it. But we actually mean a raw egg without a shell, keeping its usual shape instead of melting into a puddle. Turns out it's a lot easier than you might think. All you need is a raw egg, a transparent glass, and some white vinegar. Gently put the egg in the glass and pour the vinegar. Now we have to wait for a while until it affects the shell. It may take longer than you expected, so be patient and maybe watch a couple of episodes of your favorite show. Now it's probably time to check if it worked. Pull the egg out of the glass gently and wash it. You have to remove the dissolved shells, and you've got yourself a raw but fairly firm egg. Nevertheless, we wouldn't recommend using it as a ball. Underwater music. Danish music band Between Music is known for its unconventional and innovative approaches to music. But one day they came up with something that amazed even their most loyal fans: an underwater concert. To make their dream come true, they studied all the peculiarities of the underwater world for 10 years, along with professors and experienced divers. As a result, they were able to create a fascinating show that looked like a dream. Imagine musicians dressed in fancy outfits and playing instruments inside 5 huge aquariums. Of course, these weren't ordinary instruments, because they would have been ruined too quickly underwater. In order to carry out the plan, they had to use fundamentally new instruments, developed with a special technology. But what about singing? Some sounds just can't be performed underwater, because they'd sound very different. Besides, it's very difficult to pronounce consonants underwater, so the band chose songs with more vowels. This is a bit like the language of the whales. But even knowing all that, it's hard to believe that this is possible, even when you see it with your own eyes. Playing violin on the operating table. In 2009, Roger Frisch, a musician of the Minnesota Orchestra, was diagnosed with a tremor disorder. The shaking in his hands was barely noticeable, but for the violinist, it became critical and halted his career. Unfortunately, humanity had not yet figured out how to cure such a disease without surgery, so Roger ended up on the surgeon's table. He agreed to undergo an experimental operation in which tiny electrodes were implanted into his brain, but because the tremor was very insignificant, the doctors couldn't be sure where to place the electrodes exactly. To help them find the right location, Roger played a slightly modified violin throughout the entire operation. He was playing while the doctors were literally digging through his head. It might sound creepy, but the operation was a success, and after 3 weeks, the violinist was able to return to the stage. Lightsaber fencing. The Star Wars universe has many fans, and while some people prefer to watch, read, and play alone, others love public events. After all, you can see amazing things there. For example, lightsaber fencing competitions. Of course, these lightsabers are much safer than those in the films, but it doesn't make the battles look any less spectacular. Yes, nobody chops off anyone's hands, but many people take part in these kind of tournaments, and there's even a Guinness World Record. It's also really interesting to watch. Glowing surfing. People like decorating everything they have with shiny and glowing things. String lights all over the house? Easy. LED strips on your bike? Yes, please. And what about glowing surf suits and glowing boards? Well, that sounds a little bit weird, but why not? Maybe these guys are going to have an underwater party with some mermaids. Well, in that case, they are well prepared. Actually, this footage is backstage from the filming of Fire on the Mountain by Chris Ben Chatler. It's a short film about the world's best athletes and their skills on skis, snowboards, and surfboards. Sounds pretty weird, but just look how brilliant they are. In every sense of the word. If you're interested, the film is available on YouTube. Huge paper plane. If you like building paper planes as a child, you probably try to make a very small and a very big model. As a rule, tiny planes don't fly, and bigger planes require way too much paper, or they're too heavy, which makes their wings bend and the plane just fall down. Now imagine a paper plane, but 13 meters long and almost 8 meters wide. This giant paper plane is real, and is known as Artura's Desert Eagle. It was created as part of the Great Paper Airplane Project, organized by Pima Air and Space Museum. Needless to say, it is impossible to launch this airplane from the ground. That's just how big and heavy it is. So Arturo's Desert Eagle was raised to the sky by a Sikorsky S-58T, and only after reaching an altitude of 820 meters it was launched. Initially, the idea was to raise the airplane approximately twice as high, but due to the strong winds, the idea was rejected. However, even from this altitude, it glided for about 10 seconds over the Arizona desert at a speed of about 160 kilometers per hour. By the way, the plane wasn't actually made of regular paper. Instead, cardboard was used, the kinds that pizza boxes are made of. Race car on a ski track. To ride on a snow-covered mountain, you usually need skis and snowboards, but would that stop a real adrenaline junkie? On January 14, 2016, the pilot Max Verstappen conquered a location that no Formula One racer had ever reached. At the wheel of the RB7 2011, the young Dutchman rushed through the snowy track in Kitzbühel. Of course, it was not easy to equip the car for such conditions. The team used special studded tires, changed the engine settings, and put the wheels in chains, but no one knew exactly how the race car would behave on the snow, especially at really low temperatures. For the pilot, it was a real challenge, a dangerous test of strength. It's terrifying what can happen if the driver fails at this speed and altitude. But Max managed to overcome the track, and 3,500 spectators witnessed his achievement. Inside a frozen lake. Many people have seen a frozen lake or river at least once in their lives. Sometimes the ice is so firm and thick that you can walk on it. Sometimes the ice is so firm and thick that you can walk on it. Sometimes it's too fragile and can only hold a bird. But usually what happens under the ice crust remains a secret. To find out, the freediver Matthew Villegas immersed himself in the incredibly cold water of the Canadian Lake Morrison Quarry with a GoPro camera, and we can only imagine how hard that was. Why is that? Well, holding your breath underwater for 80 seconds on a warm day is hard enough, but imagine doing it when the temperature drops below zero. Besides, you can't get out at any time because you're separated from the air by a thick crust of ice. But it was still worth it, because the diver managed to film some incredible footage. The green, surreal world hidden from everyone under the ice is a mesmerizing sight. Playing guitar and surfing. Mixing different hobbies is not always a good idea. Swimming while skiing or knitting while riding a bike sounds like impossible and silly things to do. However, sometimes almost incompatible activities can go well together, especially if a real professional is involved. Canadian musician and surfer Chris Howe has managed to ride the waves and play his electric guitar at the same time. This was possible using artificial waves created by a boat. As you can see at the beginning of the video, Chris throws the cable to prove to his audience that he's not tied to the boat and moves on his own. The video was shot with GoPro cameras, and the sound of the electric guitar was recorded using the latest technology of the iPhone portable guitar amplifier. Hal connected his homemade guitar to the machine in a waterproof case, and the next thing he had to do was learn how to move on the water and play without falling off the board. We don't know how many attempts it took him to make this video, but this is probably the most successful example of combining two different hobbies in human history. Human hairball. We agree it sounds a little creepy, but don't worry, nobody had swallowed this hair. A giant ball that looks like Cousin It from the Addams Family was on display at the Ohio Expo Center, and it made a lot of fuss. Although it's not believed to be the biggest ball of hair in the world, it's still pretty impressive. And the hairball also has a name, Hoss, after Dan Blocker's character from the series Bonanza. Hoss was created by hairdresser Steve Warden. In 2013, Warden started collecting clients' hair at his salon. When he finished a haircut, he simply swept the hair in a chute connected to a trash bin in the basement of his salon. Surprisingly, almost none of the clients wondered why the hairdresser needed their hair at all. A few months later, Warden began to create the hairball. He glued the strands, then gave his creation a week to dry, and then added another layer. Today, the 56-kilogram hairball appears at various shows in many cities across the United States, and anyone can add their hair to the project. Psst, dude, are you looking for new technologies and great gadgets? Are your thoughts focused on the future? Do you love huge vehicles and can't imagine your life without robots around you? Then visit TechZone and you'll find all this and more. The link is in the description. You interested? Great.